The questions clarify the sensation you feel. The feeling points you back to the trigger. The trigger then becomes the place where you practice the pause. And the pause is what gives you room for redirection. It is a joy to be hidden and a disaster not to be found. Donald Winnicott, a British pediatrician and psychoanalyst, wrote about something called the false self. And the way I understand it, he was talking about the version of us that steps forward before the real us ever gets a chance to be seen. The version that knows what will keep the peace. The version that quickly learns what gets approval and which parts of us need to be softened before anyone can reject them. And that is not automatically a bad thing. See, Winnicott even talks about how, in a healthy way, we all have some kind of social self, a polite self, a version that helps us move through the world without giving everyone full access to us. That part makes sense. The problem starts when the social self becomes the only self that gets to speak. When that persona takes over so much of your life that the real you only comes out in pockets. When you're alone and nobody needs anything from you. When there's no mood to manage or version to maintain, no reaction to prepare for. And then everywhere else you feel yourself slipping back into the role you've knowingly or unknowingly created for yourself. The version that knows exactly how easy, useful, and low maintenance it needs to become so nobody has to feel uncomfortable. That's when the false self stops feeling like privacy and starts feeling like disappearance. Okay, so how do we even catch this in real life? Because I find that it's not always obvious in the moment. A lot of the time, you'll only notice it after the conversation, the dinner, the meeting, whatever it was. I want you to start with questions like, what did it cost me to be that version of myself today? Or did I feel pressure while I was being easy? Did I feel anxious while I was being funny? Did I feel like I was going to get caught if I stopped performing? Did I feel exhausted after being low maintenance? Did I leave feeling connected or just relieved that I got through the room? Look, those answers matter. They show you the exact behaviors and moments where the role that gets you that stamp of approval is taking you away from yourself. That's usually where I would start, not with the typical "who am I?" That question can get too big too quickly anyways. So now the question is, okay, so what do we do with this information? Because I don't think you fix this by suddenly becoming the most honest and unfiltered version of yourself in every situation you walk into. That would probably overwhelm your body. And honestly, some rooms have not earned that much access to you. The point of those questions is not just to understand your behavior, it's to understand what pulled you into it. So the next time you find yourself in a similar situation, you're not walking in blind. You might still feel the urge to perform, but being aware of your triggers gives you the power to anticipate your own reaction. There's a therapy approach called acceptance and commitment therapy, and one of its core ideas is psychological flexibility. Basically, it means noticing the pull of an old pattern without immediately obeying it. So the goal is not to suddenly become fearless. It's to recognize the trigger, feel the discomfort, and pause for 1 second longer than you usually would. To pause long enough for you to respond honestly and intentionally instead of reacting out of fear or whatever the core emotional cause might be. And eventually you'll let yourself have an honest, real preference. You'll be able to say, I don't really feel like that today, without turning it into a whole legal defense. To let silence exist without rushing just to make everyone else comfortable. And with enough practice, you will become confident in who you actually are. Because at the end of the day, that's all this is, a confidence issue to be solved. That's how I think our real self starts to come back, by repeatedly rejecting moments of self-abandonment and practicing intentional behavior. The questions clarify the sensation you feel. The feeling points you back to the trigger. The trigger then becomes the place where you practice the pause, and the pause is what gives you room for redirection.